fassen. Ja, um den ersten Panel zu eröffnen, möchte ich Ihnen kurz Dr. Chamanara vorstellen, diesen Vortrag über Identität tiefe Einblicke verspricht. Ich bitte Sie auf die Bühne, Herr Dr. Chamanara. Ja, ein Applaus für ihn. Vielen Dank, dass Sie heute den Weg hierher gefunden haben. Ja, während er sich auf die Bühne begibt und sich vorbereitet, möchte ich Ihnen gerne ein paar biografische Daten von Herrn Dr. Behrooz Chamanara vorstellen. Und zwar, Dr. Chamanara promovierte 2014 am Institut für Iranistik an der Universität Göttingen mit einer Arbeit zum Thema The Kurdish Shahnameh and its Religious and Literary Implications. Im Jahr 2015 gründete er das International Institute for the Study of Kurdish Societies in Göttingen, dessen Direktor er bis heute noch ist. Ja, ein Jahr später wurde Dr. Chamanara Fakultätsmitglied der Abteilung für kurdische Sprache und Literatur an der Universität Kurdistan im Iran. Ja, und er leitete das Kurdistan Studies Institute, abgekürzt KSI, an der Universität Kurdistan. Ja, und als Experte für kurdische Sprachen und Literatur hat Dr. Chamanara wichtige Monographien wie The Kurdish Shahnameh im Jahr 2016 und im Jahr 2022 Towards Standard Kurdish Orthography verfasst. Seine jüngsten Artikel, darunter Kurdish Lexicography im Oxford Handbook of Kurdish Linguistics und Self-Identification and Language Designation in Literary Gurani, zeugen von seinem Engagement für die Wissenschaft. Ja, Dr. Chamanara wurde nach der China-Bewegung im Iran 2023 leider aus dem akademischen Leben vertrieben und lebt derzeit im Exil in Deutschland. Ja, herzlichen Dank für Ihr Engagement, Herr Dr. Chamanara, und dass Sie auch den Weg hierher gefunden haben. Nun eröffne ich Ihnen den Raum. Vielen Dank, einen Applaus nochmal.
So, as I mentioned before, my talk is about the subject of subjectivity in Literary Gurani, which is a style of Kurdish literary and Kurdish literature. The Kurdish language stands as a unique entity, distinguished by its resolute resistance and dynamic evolution. It bears the imprint of a historical struggle, navigating the shadows cast by three formidable imperial languages, namely Arabic, Persian, and Ottoman Turkish. In this linguistic journey, Kurdish has not only weathered the dominance of major villages and imperial forces, notably Arabic, and as the language of Islam world on one hand, and Persian as the official language of some kind of empires in the Middle East, and on the other side, the Ottoman Turkish as the language of the Ottoman Empire that reigned for over 700 years, but it has also forged its own path of development. What sets the Kurdish language apart is not merely its historical survival, but its unique ability to observe and reflect the subjectivity of its authors. This distinctive feature adds a layer of individual expression and also a collective kind of expression and perspective to the language's evolution, creating a rich tapestry of resistance and identity. Kurdish language, with its resilience and adaptability, stands as a testament to the intricate interplay between history, culture, and linguistic evolution. The historical influence of the Kurdish language has been significantly hindered by the lack of a centralized political entity devoted to its support and promotion. Moreover, geopolitical factors, coupled with the suppression of Kurdish identity and the harrowing experience of massacres, have contributed to the systematic linguicide in the modern ages and further marginalizing the language. In response to this suppression, the Kurds have resiliently constructed an oral platform for culture, preservation, preservation, and transmission of their cultural data. Parts of this rich heritage have gradually found expression in written form since the 15th century, after the rise of Safavid in Iran. It's noteworthy that Gurani, as a composite literary language, serves as a linguistic cornerstone for a majority of Kurds, particularly in regions where Kurmanji is not the predominant dialect. This linguistic diversity adds a layer of complexity to the challenges. Recent endeavors have emerged to rejuvenate and advocate for Kurdish language. To date, most research on this topic has focused either on the linguistic aspect or understanding its ethnic or identity religious implications. Nowadays, the question about Gurani is mostly about the ethnicity and about the identity of the people who speak or use Gurani in the common life, everyday life speaking. But most of the researchers have left the question of the identity of author and the subjectivity for the other. Given that there is a vast collection of Gurani texts that are extensive, numerous, and stored in various personal archives and libraries, with most of them remaining unreviewed, unrevised, and unpublished. It is not feasible to access all of them. So my question and my research there is mostly based on that kind of resources and manuscripts that are in possession of those individuals, and some of them in possession of the libraries, mostly in Kurdistan and in Rojhelat in Iran. Regarding identity and language, the question at hand is whether or not the text designates a specific language or identifies an identity. And are they self-aware of what they display? In addition, if the answer to this question is affirmative, what are their references, and in what likely context, and in response to what action did they first appear? In this article, I will explore The emergence of Kurdish subjectivity in Literary Gurani, tracing its evolution and examining its response to neighboring languages and centers of power. I mean, in Iran, Persian, and in the Turkey, and the age of Ottomans, the Ottoman Turkey, Turkish and Arabic, in Iraq and the western part of the Kurdish region. Self-identification and language designation in literature are intricately intertwined with the concept of identity, which is deeply influenced by knowledge. The formation of identity relies on various forms of knowledge, and this knowledge is derived from a space-place-based epistemology known as geo-epistemology. Determining identity is a complex process influenced by various factors, including personal experiences, cultural background, social interactions, and self-perception. While there is no definitive method to ascertain one's identity, scholars have proposed different frameworks and theories to understand this multi-faceted concept. In literature, authors often draw from their geo-epistemological background to inform their narratives and language choices. The knowledge they possess rooted in their unique geographic and cultural context. This context provides them with a distinct perspective and informs the way they reflect on themselves and others. I'm coming to dynamics of self-other relation, and I will talk about three different phases of Gurani's subjectivity during the history of Gurani, which is the first one is emergence and the compromise and resistance. Within the intricate landscape of Gurani literary evolution, the analysis of its linguistic and identity references as drawn from the existing literature unfolds through three interrelated phases, as you see here. So I'm coming to the first, which is the allegiance. During the phase of allegiance, Gurani authors faced challenging circumstances and sought a middle ground. They recognized the need to adapt to external pressure while still preserving the core elements of Gurani language and identity. This involved incorporation, that's kind of coalition or cooperation with the languages around. This incorporation elements from other languages and culture into their works while maintaining a strong foundation in Gurani. During this phase, many Kurdish authors had a diminished regard for their native tongue, doubting its ability, Kurdish or Gurani, to serve as a medium for intellectual and religious discourse. They believed that Kurdish was incapable of conveying the depth and sophistication of knowledge and spirituality found in their language. For example, Fakhr Qadir Hamawand in 1890, a renewed narrator of Kurdish tales, makes this point abundantly clear in his translation of Mi'raj Nameh, or the Book of Ascension, As you can see here, تا معراجنامه به لفظ کردی بنویسون پی آمجا کردواری ارچوا چیان عربی و فارسی کم منفعتن پی عوام ناسی اور پری عوام ناسی فارسی و عربی چنین عربی پی خاص و کرام کردیش بو خاصن پی کرد و عوام ارچه من قابل این نیانان وجودن چشن امن کینان. So the translation of that literally is translating Mi'rajnama in Kurdish for the local audiences or for illiterate audiences, as Persian and Arabic have limited benefit for common people, for the Kurdish people. Farsi and Arabic cater to the nobility, while Kurdish is fitting for nomads and the general or illiterate population. As another instance, while the production of religious texts in accordance with the intellectual system of the Islamic ruler in other languages has encountered the slightest opposition from the government and the Islamic society, another poet, Belbari, from Belbar, the Kurdish narrator of the Gurani version of Shafi'i principles of jurisprudence, probably passed the strict filter of the secular language by this logic that body politic must teach the Islamic connotations to the Kurds in their own native language. And he says, فقه شافعی کرد به گورانی تازاناش زمرو کردی زوانی. So he tries not to interfere in the Islamic religious discourse, but he wants to use that discourse, the Islamic discourse, and the teachings to bring that teaching to the Kurds, to the Kurdish nomads. That's why he says, I'm using Gurani for those who cannot understand Arabic. So, I'm coming to compromise the second phase, second level. As the Gurani literary tradition advanced, a period of compromise emerged. Authors actively resisted external influences that posed a threat to the integrity and existence of Gurani language and identity. They emphasized the unique value of Gurani, promoted its use in various literary forms, and resisted assimilation into dominant languages and culture. This period was marked by a steadfast determination to preserve and protect Gurani as a distinct language and cultural entity. Authors of this period are aware of the difference between themselves and the other, as well as the difference between their own language and the language of others. However, they are more sensitive to their relationship with the other than the first group was. While recognizing and respecting other languages, this group have favored and revered their native language above all. For example, by insisting on universal values, Khana Qabadi, around 1700 and 1759, emphasized that everyone loves his or her own language, while referencing the renewed renewed proverb, Farsi shakar ast. Persian says Farsi is sugar, or Persian is sugar. And he says, yes, Persian is sugar, but Kurdish is more sweet or sweeter. He says, Rastan mawachan Farsi shakaran, کردی جفارسی بل شیرین ترن پیشش ندوران ای دنیای بدکش محظوظن هر کس به زبان ویش معلومن هر کس به هر زبانی بو آچو نظم جهر مکان. So, it says, contrary to this famous saying, Farsi is sweet, to me Kurdish is sweeter. That's why in this uneven era, anyone is happy with its own language. And the following talks about Kurdistan and the unity of that land. So, I try to talk briefly, and I'm coming to the resistant level, which is the last one. In this phase, resistance, in the subsequent phase of resistance, Gurani authors took a more confrontational stance. They directly addressed the existence of a meaningful distance between themselves and their others. This involved engaging in critical discourse, questioning dominant narrative, and advocating for the recognition and revitalization of Gurani. The focus shifted to actively opposing threat and advocating for the rights and visibility of Gurani language and identity. This group encompasses those authors who believed the Kurdish language to be sacred, and they have willingly and knowingly turned away from other languages. Sayyid Salih Maydashti, who lived between 1834 and 1950, exemplifies the entire perspective of this category the best because his poetic expression entails a significant shift in how to distinguish oneself from other. Sayyid Salih Maydashti or Hayran Ali Shah is one of the sheikhs or the peers of the Kermanshah region, had a good relationship to the peers in central Iran, but after a while he decides to come back to his village and to his people and talks to them in Kurdish. And when the sheikhs of Kashan and Shiraz, in contrary, ask him only to speak Persian and Arabic to teach people, he says, روی حقم منظور هوم کلام ناطق آیات نوم لسان کردیم کلام حقا واتی من کلام حق مطلقا اگر مخالف دین مبینن لکم دینکم ولی دینم. So, in this verse, which is, you can find the translation here, I am face to face with Haq, or the God, and I'm desired by him. I'm the expressive word of the new verse, which is like Qur'an, and my Kurdish conveys the words of truth. My speech is the word of absolute truth. If this is a blasphemy, brazenly opposing, keep your faith to yourself and I keep mine in my heart. So that's the obvious confrontation of the discourse of a Kurdish discourse in language and the subjectivity of Kurdish man in Literary Gurani against the neighboring imperial and religious language of Persian and Arabic. In these lines, he purposefully used the Arabic word lisan, look here, lisan Kurdim, rather than using the Kurdish word zwan for language. By doing so, he placed his language as the holy Arabic equal in the sacred Quranic context, because in one of the verses in Quran it says lisan al-Arabiya, and that's the sacred language. And he says Kurdish is as well a sacred language, while emphasizing tongue in the statement to be the absolute truth, indirectly alluding to the 6th verse of Kafirun, Surah Kafirun, which says, Lakum dinakum waliyadin. He tries to use the same word as those words that Muhammad has used in Quran for making Arabic as a sacred language, and tries to do the same for Kurdish language. So I'm summing up my talk here. So, how much time I have? Habe ich noch Zeit, oder? Okay. I just wanted to add this, that in Kurdistan, as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, there is a kind of geo-epistemology, which means any kind of data production or cultural data production comes from a kind of place, a space, or location. For example, those kind of data who comes from a hospital is different than those data or those knowledge that comes from a university, for example. In Kurdistan, we have madrasa, we have hujra khana, we have khanaqah, we have kinds of centers of power as well. So that kind of knowledge, on one hand, and another one, that kind of prosody and the literature which Gurani comes from is a kind of structure which is like a background for those authors to use it as a treasury and to use the phrases, use the imagery system, use the verses of the poets before they said. And that's like in Kurdish we say Pashkhan, or we say the background, Peshkhan or Pashkhan. So that's why, for example, Ranjuri in Kirkuk a poet in Kirkuk can simply say, I'm the poet who is following Besarani in Besarani in Iran, or Ghulam Raza Khan al-Kawazi in Ilam. So that's a slight but clear line between those poets in the vast geography of Kurdistan, and there is no time limitation. When you talk, when you have some kind of poetic production, you can simply refer to those who were before you and talk to those who are living with you. For example, we have lots of letters that have been written and sent to the poets, and they write them answers or again questions to them. And I mean, there is a direct relationship between that poets in Gurani system. So, in conclusion, this study underscores the gradual evolution of subjectivity, awareness within Gurani literature authors, aligning with the themes explored in the preceding text. The majority of narrators and translators in Gurani literature reveal a robust sense of self intertwined with their identity, language, and the linguistic fabric of their works. Thank you so much, and I hope I could send my message to you, and I'm not sure if